Greetings everyone, happy Tuesday. We're going to continue on our series on remote training collar fundamentals. Yesterday you learned a little bit about why there's such a division between dog owners and this particular device. You either, like I said, you either swear by them, you love remote training collars, you love what they can do for your dog, or you hate them and you hate anyone who uses them. Well, this week, the whole purpose is to educate you on the device. And at the end of the week, you can decide whether you want to use one or not. But for some of you who have already made the decision, I'm going to be like the other million Americans who purchased a remote training collar last year, and I want to try using it on my dog. We'll start getting into training theory tomorrow, how to actually use the device if you're going to train your dog with it. But let's talk about the device itself and some of the things that I personally have to have if I'm going to use a remote training collar with my dogs, or what we do here at Taming the Wild, and also some of the features that are required by the USDA to make sure that all these devices are safe for dogs. Okay, so let's get into that one first. You can buy, there's tons of remote training collars out there on the market, and they vary greatly. They really do. Everything from price to the features that they incorporated in that particular device. Everything from Bluetooth transmitters to GPSs, so you know exactly where your dog is at any given moment. They're pretty darn neat, and they come with a lot of bells and whistles. But let me tell you about 3 features that's required by the USDA on any remote training collar that you purchase here in the United States. 1, the highest level cannot harm the dog. Now, when they say that, again, everything is different. Every living being is different. If the animal has some sort of underlying medical condition, then it may. It certainly can. Anything can harm a dog if it has that case there. They're simply talking about a healthy animal with a device used by the reasonable and prudent dog owner. You cannot harm it. So even at the highest level, it is not supposed to cause any sort of lasting, permanent damage or harm to your dog. Number 2, if it has a continuous mode. Notice when I press this button should go off in 12 seconds. So we'll just hold it down. There we go. Now I'll let go. And that's a safety feature that's incorporated in case on the continuous mode, because most of these remote training collars come with 2 modes. Continuous, meaning as long as you hold the stimulus button down, the dog will receive the stimulus from the receiver until you let go. However, if you don't let go within 12 seconds, this device, the transmitter, will no longer send a signal to the receiver. And they did that, again, not to make it idiot-proof. They did it in case that button malfunctions. There's a safety backup. There's some redundancy to, once again, always trying to keep the welfare and the safety of the animal in mind. And then lastly, the last feature that they all have to have is that all the buttons that can activate the transmitter, every one of them, have to be flush mounted. So no matter what design you see, no matter which particular remote training collar you purchase, you'll find that all of them have flush buttons, which means it can land any time on one of those buttons. You can slap it in your palm, it can land flat down on the table, on the ground, and it will not turn on. It will not activate the receiver. It will not send a signal to it. So those are the 3 safety features. Cannot harm the dog at the highest level. A continuous feature, if you do have it, cannot send a signal for greater than 12 seconds, and all of the activation buttons must be flush. Okay, so outside of that, what are some features that I would recommend that you have? Number 1, by far, is a wide stimulus range. And this particular model, as you see here, has a rheostat dial, kind of like turn up the volume on a radio. You see it just going up, 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 up. This particular model has 100 individual levels. 100 individual. This one 127 individual. This one 100. I have to have that. In the early days when these things first came out, you had one choice and it was just one level. And then they gave you like 4 choices. And then these things have grown just like any technology that has grown. I can remember the very first cell phones. If you remember those, they were like yay tall, telescoping antenna. Remember the ones that used to be in the cars? If you're old enough, they were actually in your car. Yeah, things change with time, and the technology for these remote callers has changed as well, making them easier to use, safer to use, and allowing for a greater range of sensitivity. Everything from simply communicating to a deaf dog, hey, I'm over here, just so you know, to applying an irritant, all the way to applying a correction. Now, the reason why I want that broad range is I cannot tell you over the years, I've seen people use these with their dogs, and the thing had the same range of sensitivity. Basically, it had the same range of sensitivity as these newer models that go all the way up to 100, from 0 to 100. But those older models, and some even today, chop that up, like for example, into 8 different segments. So level 1 would probably be 20 on this model here. Level 2, possibly 40, so on and so forth, all the way up. And here's my problem with these. You press the button on level 1, nothing. No reaction from the dog whatsoever. It doesn't even know it's there. Press it on 2, same thing. Doesn't even have a clue it's there. Press it on level 3, and the darn thing wants to jump through your roof. We have a problem with that. That's a huge problem, and you'll find out why tomorrow. That's a huge problem. So the number one feature I want you to look for in any remote training collar before you purchase it is a rheostat type dial or a very broad range, individual levels. Because again, if this is 3 and it's sending my dog through the roof, you're going to sit there and ask yourself and go, does it have like 2 1/4, 2 1/2, 2 3/4? 3's too much, 2's too little. So make sure it has that. That I have to have. Okay, now, beyond that, what are some other features? Cool stuff here. I've always said the easier your equipment is to use, the more often you'll use it, the more you're apt to use it. And you know, anything, the complexity kills anything, simplicity. What is the old rule? Complexity is the enemy of execution. So you don't want to make it too complex. Well, nowadays, they've now incorporated what's called a Bluetooth feature. Way cool. Because how many times are you sitting there, your dog's on your counter, doing something harmful, and you're going, oh, where'd I leave my transmitter? Oh, no, I can't. Oh, too late. Now the dog's off the counter. Well, now you have the choice of wearing a ring. You can actually wear a ring on your finger. You can do so. And if you'll look here, you'll see it as I press the button, light up. So if you stay within about 30 feet of these things, you know, give or take a few thick walls or a sign or a bunch of trees or whatever, but for the most part, about 25 to 30 feet, you can park this thing on your kitchen counter and just press the ring while you're using it. You can also, these rings are also flush mounted, so you can clap your hands and say, good boy. You can grab a leash, you can grab the dog, you can grab your equipment, and it will not inadvertently cause the transmitter to then send a signal to the receiver. So way cool. This allows a lot more manipulation, a lot more handling of the animal. Just press a darn button. Neat thing is you throw this thing in your pocket. There it is. You're walking down the sidewalk right there. Just one little touch of the button. So that's way cool. Other ones, they have a strap. You can turn it into a ring if you want to, or you can just wear it like a watch band, wear it over your wrist, wear it over your palm. Again, this is a Doctra model here. They have that. So I love that. I think that that's a huge, huge gain and a really nifty invention for these remote training collars because, again, if it's easier to use, then you're more apt to use it. And your timing is going to be so much better. Plus, it cuts down on mistakes. Meaning, when you press any of these buttons, like this one here on this particular Bluetooth model here, it can only send the signal from the unit itself. Like, for example, if this one's on level, I'll go ahead and put it on 20. It will only send 20 to the dog. But some models come with boost buttons. For example, you look here, you see this big red button. You can program this particular model so that if you press the black button, the dog receives 20, and typically from the factory comes 5 up. You press the red button, it jumps to 25. You can program that to jump 1 up, so 20 turns into 21, or you can program it to go 60 up, so 20 turns into 80. So of course, if you didn't want 80, you didn't need 80, and your dog's never going to need 80, you don't want to make the error of pressing the wrong button. By having the Bluetooth only marries up with the black button. So in all these collars, it only marries up with whatever is already in your display window. There's no boost advantage from any of the Bluetooths. So again, it cuts down the rate of mistakes that are made by people with their dogs. And by the way, just so you know, this one's activated. Here's 20, doing it to myself. Okay. I can sing in the shower with this. You probably don't want to hear me sing in the shower, but I definitely can sing in the shower. And here we are, we're going to go ahead and go to the boost here. So now we're up to 25 on that. And these are fingers that could read Braille, can detect minute changes in temperature, texture, you name it. So again, very sensitive fingers on the end of these and not a big deal. And most dogs, in my experience, that you want to do obedience, and obedience is heel, sit, down, stay, come and call, all that sort of stuff, rarely have to go past 25. Some can definitely go up to about 40, but rarely do you go up to those higher levels. Typically, the very high levels are reserved for those behaviors that you never want to associate with you. A really hot stove, a really hot counter, a really hot sofa, flower beds, so on and so forth. Because those are typically one and dones or maybe two and dones, and the animal will never do that behavior again. So now you don't have to worry that you left your prescriptions up on the counter, a bag of chocolate on the counter, or the animal's going to sit there and ignite your gas stove and burn half of your house down. So anyway, these are good features here. Some other ones that you may want to take, make sure that these have. I like the rechargeable units. Batteries, to me, anytime you have to install batteries, they're unreliable. You're dependent upon what came from the factory into packaging, how long it's been into packaging. You've got a little bit more predictive information when you can recharge it and use it a little bit. So that's a really neat thing, and I would look for rechargeable batteries. And then also most of the units come, the receiver, and definitely in all three of these units here, are waterproof, meaning your dog can swim with it on. Kind of know this though. This is the antenna. All these have a built-in antenna. Back in the days, they actually had an antenna sticking off the receiver, a big old long rubber thing. Got knocked off by tree branches and everything else as the animal went running through the woods. But now the antenna is internal. And when that antenna goes underneath the water, it makes it very difficult for this antenna to talk to that one. So many times you'll see duck hunters, anyone that's going to use these when their dogs are doing any sort of work in the water or water sports, they will take the receiver and turn it to the back side of the dog's neck so that the antenna will receive the signal from the transmitter. But they are waterproof. They do not cause any more intensity being in the water than out of the water. If anything, just a little bit more continuity. But once again, once they're under the water, it's game over. Now they won't work. So kind of keep that in mind as we move into training with them. Typically, the transmitters in your hands, this one will float. So if you drop it in the water, it'll just float. This one here will float as well. They're okay to have in a driving, pouring rain. Remember, it's the outdoor industry, it's the hunting industry that actually purchases more remote training collars than any other industry. And when you're out there, you're getting smacked around, you drop your transmitter, it rolls halfway down a mountainside. They're very hardy. They're made to land in the mud, completely submerged in the mud. They can have a driving rain, good to go. So make sure your unit that you get is really hardy, because kind of like having an iPhone without a case on it. You may think it feels really cool and nice and lightweight in your pocket, but you will drop it eventually. So these things get dropped all the darn time, smacked up against the wall, dogs grab them, think it's a toy and throws the darn thing. Make sure you have something that's really, really hardy. Okay, and other than that, the only thing that I can think of is You may want a tone type capability or a vibration type capability. The vibration capability on these remote collars are really handy for those dogs who do not have very good hearing. And it's also handy to train a dog to respond to you without an auditory signal. Back in the days when I was a police canine officer, the police canines that we trained and deployed, we could be outside of a building while the animal was doing a building search for a deadly criminal. And when we wanted to have our dogs return to us, we simply pressed the vibration button because that animal was trained that when it felt that, it immediately found us. It came to us. So that's way cool from a tactical application, way cool for when your dog's a long ways away from you and it's not going to hear you on a fall day when there's 50 million leaves laying on the forest floor, or for whatever reason the wind is right in your face, they can't hear you. Now you can touch them at a distance, gain their attention, they can see you possibly, and then give them a hand signal. So I want to make sure you have all those. So again, just a real quick rundown. Rheostat control, absolutely. Bluetooth, yeah, that's kind of my need category. It wasn't my want category. Kind of moves them to my need category. Because again, for my clients who want to use these, ease of use means I'll use it. And that's the whole idea. And you'll find out here over the next couple of days when we talk about training theory behind them. If you're going to use it, you need to go all the darn way and use it. The other thing that you want to have is make sure it's got a rechargeable battery, so you can rely on that battery a little bit more. You also want to make sure that your receiver is waterproof in case your dog jumps into a creek or a lake. And you also want to make sure that the transmitter that's in your hand is a very hardy piece of equipment because you are going to drop it. It's just part of it. Outside of that, man, there's a bunch out there. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask me regarding a particular model that I'm not showing today. Again, this is made by Educator, Dogtra, but there's Garmin, good Lord, there's a million different ones out there. If you've got your eyes set on a particular model and you want to know if Bryan, what he thinks of it, send it to me. I'll be glad to take a look at it real quick, meaning just online, and give you my 2 cents on it. And Joshua, who's filming this, he's an expert on these as well, and so he can also help you with it. But yeah, let's make sure you get the right equipment. Otherwise, if you don't get the right equipment, it's really hard to do the training part with it. It's really difficult. I can't have this. I cannot have these chopped up only 8 levels or even only 16. That does not work for me. And I'm going to be honest with you, in most applications, it won't work for you either. All right, you got any questions, you know where to send them. Bryan with the Y at tamingthewild.com. And if you found this information beneficial to you or you think it might be beneficial to someone else, share it with them. Send it to them. Okay, guys? And tomorrow we're going to dive right into how do you now start to train your dog using a remote collar. I'll see you then.